We're exploring this paradox of the gifted child, specifically through the really groundbreaking work of psychoanalyst Alice Miller.
A pioneer, truly.
Right. And her explanation digs into why so many bright, high-achieving people, maybe you felt like you peaked in school,
Yeah.
why they often become unhappy adults, kind of disconnected from what they actually want.
And this is where it gets really interesting, I think, because Miller didn't just point out the problem, she offered a path forward.
Exactly.
So today we're going to reveal her key technique, the method of recovering the true self. It's a practical daily approach, something you can actually do to reconnect with those buried feelings and, find your own authentic way in life.
Before we get into the how-tos, though, let's just ground this. This isn't some niche issue affecting only, child prodigies. It's surprisingly common.
Oh, absolutely.
We looked into it, and some of the numbers are quite stark.
Mm-hmm.
One study found 78% of people who were top students in school report experiencing significant imposter syndrome later on. 78%.
Wow. So they look successful on the outside, but inside.
Inside, they feel like a fraud,
Yeah.
and there's a real emotional toll. Another statistic, a staggering 65% of those identified as gifted children struggle with depression by the time they hit 30.
That's deeply concerning.
It is. And maybe the most sobering, only about 23% of former child prodigies actually report feeling genuinely happy as adults. So there's this clear, almost tragic link being shown between hitting all those external goals and this internal emptiness.
And that emptiness, Miller argues, starts with how we even define gifted. It's not just about being super smart, although that often goes with it.
Right.
Miller defines giftedness fundamentally as hypersensitivity to the needs of others.
Right.
It's like the child has these incredibly fine-tuned antennae constantly scanning, what do my parents need? What are their moods? What are their expectations?
At the expense of their own needs.
Exactly. At the expense of their own emerging self, they become, functionally, little adults way too soon.
That sounds exhausting. And if you're constantly focused outward, you sort of have to build a version of yourself that pleases others, right? Which brings us to the first big concept, the false self.
Precisely. The false self is that perfect, approved persona. It's constructed piece by piece, purely to get love, affirmation, validation from the parents, usually. It's a survival strategy, fundamentally.
Okay.
But what often makes it stick, what really cements it, is the second concept, narcissistic extension.
Narcissistic extension. That sounds pretty heavy. What does that actually look like?
Yeah, it sounds clinical, but it's quite common. It basically means the child, without realizing it, becomes a kind of vehicle for the parent's own unfulfilled dreams or needs.
Like living through the child.
Sort of. The parent might unconsciously need the child to get into that top university or be the star athlete, or maybe just be the perfectly behaved, never any trouble kid, because that success reflects back onto the parent, validates their ego. The child isn't just achieving for themselves.
Wow. Okay. So you're living according to someone else's script. To do that, you must have to disconnect from your own feelings, your internal guide.
You absolutely do. And that's emotional blindness. It's the inability later in life to even recognize, let alone identify or express your true feelings, especially the difficult ones, anger, sadness, resentment, fear.
Why those specifically?
Because those feelings were often inconvenient or maybe even threatening to the parent's emotional stability back in childhood. So the child learns very early on to just suppress them, push them down until they almost disappear from conscious awareness.
And keeping this whole structure going. That must take energy. That's the perfectionist trap, isn't it?
That's the engine, yes.
Yeah.
Since the false self is only valued for what it does, for its achievements, your self-esteem gets completely hooked on external validation.
So you're always chasing the next goal.
Always. It's a constant pressure loop. You achieve something, get a brief hit of relief maybe, but never true satisfaction, because there's always the next thing you have to do to feel okay. You can never just be.
The core idea here, then, is really tragic. This sensitive child basically trades their childhood, their authentic self, for approval.
They sacrifice it to be convenient, to be loved, or what feels like love. And the cost isn't just, missing out on fun. It's losing your internal navigation system, your connection to your own desires, feelings, boundaries.
Miller actually mapped out how this tends to develop. She saw 3 broad psychological stages. First, adaptation, roughly from birth to age 7.
Learning the ropes.
Yeah, figuring out the rules of the family system, learning how to be the good child, the one who doesn't cause trouble.
Then comes compensation, maybe around 7 to 14. This is where achievements really become the main way to earn that conditional love or approval.
Like, if I get straight A's, maybe mom will be less stressed, or if I win the competition, dad will be proud.
Exactly. Performance becomes the currency, which almost inevitably leads down the line to exhaustion. This often kicks in during the teenage years, maybe later.
And that's the feeling.
That's that deep, hollowing sense of inner emptiness. You've climbed the mountain, you've gotten the grades, the job, whatever it was, but you feel nothing. Or worse, just despair. You realize the currency you earn doesn't actually buy happiness or meaning.
It really sounds like a system designed for self-abandonment. How do you see this playing out today? Is modern life making it worse?
Oh, absolutely. It's like throwing gasoline on the fire. The whole achievement culture we live in, the constant pressure to perform, the 247 nature of social media.
Right, the highlight reel effect.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It pushes children towards needing external validation even earlier and more intensely. Every success has to be broadcasted, every flaw hidden. There's no room for just being human.
And you see specific patterns in childhood, right? These kids often take on way too much responsibility for the family's emotional weather.
Yes, they become little managers of their parents' feelings. They're experts at suppressing their own negative emotions, anger, fear, sadness, because those weren't welcome.
They end up parenting their parents, in a way.
In a real sense, yes.
Yeah.
And developmentally, it's skewed. Their intellect might race ahead, but their emotional maturity lags way behind.
Yeah.
They can grasp complex ideas, but crumble under simple disappointment.
And how does that translate into adulthood? What are the common struggles?
Well, you see that chronic difficulty with boundaries. Saying no feels almost impossible, potentially catastrophic. There's often that persistent, gnawing sense of inner emptiness, no matter how much they achieve professionally.
And relationships.
It's difficulty forming real intimacy, real trust, because true connection requires vulnerability, showing your real self, which they learned was dangerous. And then there's that decision-making paralysis.
Ah, yes, the what's the right thing to do trap.
Exactly. They're always searching for the externally approved answer, the script, because they can't access or trust their own internal sense of what do I actually want. That's the false self searching for instructions.
So Miller's point was really a warning, wasn't it? These individuals can achieve incredible things, be CEOs, top academics, you name it.
Absolutely. They often excel.
But that deep sense of satisfaction, of living a meaningful life, it just stays out of reach
Yeah.
because it's not their life they're living.
Precisely. And modern culture just keeps reinforcing it. The constant digital showcasing, the hustle culture telling you your worth is your productivity.
And sometimes parents, even loving ones, acting more like managers of their kids' achievements than just parents.
Yeah, perpetuating that narcissistic extension idea, sometimes well into adulthood. It's a tough cycle to break.
Okay, so that's the theory, the what's and the why. But this is where the hope comes in, right? How do we actually start to repair this? How do we find our way back?
The journey back starts, Miller insisted, with acknowledging the past pain. Not just understanding it intellectually, but actually feeling it.
Which brings us to the first practical technique, the emotional archaeologist technique. Sounds intriguing.
It's about digging, basically, starting to excavate those suppressed childhood feelings, but, and this is crucial, without immediately censoring or judging them.
That sounds difficult.
It can be very confronting, yeah, because you're essentially allowing feelings that your entire system was built to keep buried. The practical way in is often journaling. Write about childhood memories, but focus first on your immediate reactions. What do you feel in your body? What emotions come up right now?
Before analyzing.
Before analyzing, yes. Allow the pain, the anger, the sadness, whatever it is, to just be there first. Don't rush to excuse your parents or rationalize it away. Just feel it. That's step one.
Okay. And then the core daily practice you mentioned earlier, the method of recovering the true self.
Yes, this is the centerpiece, really. It's about creating small, consistent habits to rebuild that connection with your authentic self, with those suppressed desires. It has 3 parts: morning, daytime, and evening.
All right, let's break it down. Morning.
Morning, just 10 minutes. Call it a need scan. You sit quietly and ask yourself one simple question. What do I want right now?
Sounds simple, but probably isn't.
It can be surprisingly hard. The key is to listen for the very first impulse, the first flicker of a desire, before your inner critic jumps in. And you have to write it down, even if it seems wrong or silly or unproductive.
Why write down the incorrect ones?
Because the false self lives on judging desires. We need to validate the impulse itself, separate from the action. Maybe the impulse is just, I want 5 more minutes of quiet, or I want that sugary cereal, or I want to check my phone across the room. Just note it without judgment.
Okay. And then,
Then you commit to satisfying at least one small, genuinely harmless desire from that list during the day. It could be tiny. Buying the nice coffee, sitting in the sun for 2 minutes. It teaches your inner self, slowly, that its needs actually matter and can be met.
okay, need scan in the morning. What about during the day?
Daytime is about honesty practice. This means actively challenging every internal I should or I must that pops up.
Oh, that's constant for many people.
Exactly. When that thought arises, you pause and ask, wait, is this a should? Or is this something I genuinely want or need to do? And you start noticing how often you automatically say yes when every fiber of your being is screaming no.
So what do you do in that moment? Saying no can feel terrifying.
It really can. The gifted child learned yes equals safety or love. So start small, use a buffer phrase. Instead of instant yes, try. Let me think about that and get back to you. It buys you crucial seconds to check in with your actual feelings rather than defaulting to the false self program.
Buys you time. Okay, and the evening.
Evening, about 15 minutes. This is the dialogue with the inner child. It sounds a bit cliche maybe, but it's powerful. It's about active self-parenting.
How does that work?
You sit quietly again, maybe visualize yourself as a child, and you ask that younger self, how do you feel today? Was that need scan hard? What came up when you wanted to say no but said yes?
And you listen.
You listen, and then you respond with empathy. Genuine understanding and support for whatever feelings came up, no matter how childish they seem. You might say, I understand you felt scared then. That was hard. I'm here now. And you make a gentle promise to try and be more mindful of those needs tomorrow. You're building an internal, secure attachment.
Wow, that's quite a daily practice. Need scan, honesty practice, inner child dialogue. Okay, what's method 3?
Method 3 is the false self-recognition technique. This is about becoming a detective about your own motivations, learning to spot when you're acting from your true self versus when you're performing for approval.
How do you tell the difference?
You ask yourself some sharp questions about your actions, like, am I doing this because I'm genuinely interested, or does it feel like a heavy obligation?
Okay.
What would actually happen emotionally, practically, if I didn't do this? Sometimes the anticipated catastrophe is just not real.
Right.
Do I feel joy or engagement during the process, or only a sense of relief when it's over? That's a big tell. And maybe the killer question. Would I still do this if absolutely no one else knew about it?
Oof. Yeah. If the answer is no,
If the answer is a hard no, chances are pretty high you're operating from the false self script.
that feels like it leads straight into method 4, boundary restoration. If you recognize you're always saying yes from the false self, you need to learn to say no.
Exactly. But because saying yes was the core survival strategy, you can't just suddenly start shouting no to everything. That's likely to backfire or feel overwhelming. It has to be gradual.
So baby steps.
Baby steps. We suggest a phased approach, maybe week by week. Week 1, just practice that buffer phrase. I'll think about it instead of the automatic yes. Just create space.
Okay. Week 2.
Week 2, try saying no to one small, low-stakes request each day. Something that doesn't feel world-ending. Maybe declining an optional meeting or a small social thing you don't want to do.
Building the muscle.
Exactly. Week 3, start tentatively expressing a need or preference directly. Instead of going along, try saying, actually, I'd prefer to do X, or I need Y.
And week 4.
Week 4, start setting clear time boundaries. Things like, I can help with that, but I only have until 3 p.m., or I need to leave by 6 tonight. It teaches your nervous system slowly that boundaries don't equal abandonment, that no can be safe.
Makes sense. Okay, final method. Method 5, working with the inner critic, that harsh voice inside.
Yes, the relentless taskmaster. Miller was clear. This inner critic isn't you. It's the introjected voice, the internalized rules, demands, and criticisms of those demanding parents or caregivers.
So you've basically installed their critical voice inside your own head.
Pretty much, and it needs reprogramming. It needs to be shifted from being a source of torment to, ideally, a source of constructive support.
How do you even start reprogramming that voice? It feels so automatic.
The first step is just noticing. Catch it in the act. When you hear that harsh critical thought, you idiot, you're lazy, you'll never be good enough, pause and ask, whose voice is this really? Is this my own wise, compassionate adult voice speaking? Or does it sound suspiciously like someone else.
Like mom or dad or a critical teacher.
Exactly. Once you identify it as not originating from your true self, you can start to actively rephrase it. You intercept the criticism and transform it into something supportive, or at least neutral and realistic.
Can you give an example?
Sure. So instead of, you completely failed at that presentation, you're useless, you might consciously rephrase it as, okay, that presentation didn't go as well as I'd hoped. It was challenging. What can I learn from it? I did my best with the resources I had.
So talking to yourself like you'd talk to a friend or even a child you cared about.
Precisely. You communicate with yourself with the kindness and understanding you likely never received when you actually failed as a child. Offer compassion, not condemnation.
Okay, those are 5 really concrete methods. Emotional archaeology, the daily recovery method, false self-recognition, boundary restoration, and working the inner critic. That brings us to the homework for this week.
Yes, and the key here is don't try to do everything perfectly all at once. That's just the old pattern showing up again.
Right, the perfectionist trap.
Exactly. So focus on structured exploration, maybe for days 1 and 2. Really commit to that daily method of recovery, the need scan, honesty practice, inner child dialogue, and journal about what comes up, those suppressed feelings and desires. Just observe.
Okay, days 1 to 2. Observe and practice the daily method.
Or then, days 3 and 4. Focus specifically on boundary practice. Use those false self-recognition questions and make a conscious effort to say no, or use the buffer phrase to at least one request each day. See how it feels.
Notice the resistance, the fear.
Yes, just notice it without judgment. And then days 5 through 7, try to integrate. Actively work with that inner critic. Catch it, identify it, rephrase it, and deepen that evening dialogue with the inner child. Offer more empathy.
Got it. And to help track progress, maybe before our next deep dive, you could check in with yourself using this kind of checklist.
Good idea.
Like, am I starting to distinguish my own desires from external shoulds? Do I notice more often when I'm acting out of duty versus genuine interest? Can I say no sometimes, even if it's uncomfortable, without being totally consumed by guilt afterward? Am I tentatively expressing my needs a bit more directly? And crucially, am I starting to treat myself with a little more understanding and support?
Those are great check-in points. And just a final, really important warning from Miller's work. This recovery process is not quick. It's not linear.
It takes time.
It takes immense self-patience. Please do not try to become perfect at doing this self-work. That is the false self sneaking back in, demanding achievement even in healing. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is increasing honesty with yourself. Authenticity.
That's a crucial distinction. Before we wrap up, there's a question that often comes up with this material. People ask, but my parents really did love me. They sacrificed for me. If I acknowledge this pain, doesn't that just make me ungrateful?
Yeah, that's a really common and understandable conflict. Miller addressed it head-on. She explained that parents absolutely could be loving, could be well-intentioned, could make sacrifices, and still unconsciously use the child to meet their own unmet narcissistic needs. The two things aren't mutually exclusive. Acknowledging the impact of that dynamic on you, acknowledging your childhood pain, doesn't erase the love that might also have been there, doesn't make you ungrateful.
It just makes you honest about your own experience.
Exactly, it makes you honest. And that honesty is the starting point for real healing.
It reminds me of that powerful Alice Miller quote, "The truth liberates, but first it frustrates."
That really nails it, doesn't it? Facing these suppressed realities is frustrating, it is painful sometimes, but Miller believed it's the essential path, maybe the only path, back to genuine connection with yourself and ultimately to a life that feels truly your own.
So the invitation is there. Return contact with your true self. Start living your life.
Absolutely. And if you want to go deeper on this, the essential starting points are Miller's own books, especially The Drama of the Gifted Child, and also For Your Own Good.
We'll link those.
Please do. And join us next time where we'll be taking a deep dive into a related and often confusing concept, gaslighting. We'll explore something called the reality anchor technique, based on early psychoanalytic ideas.
Looking forward to it. Thanks for tuning into this deep dive.